All right. So, hi. Good day, students. Welcome to the discussion. No? Pag-usapan natin yung old or traditional media, no, of storytelling. So, storytelling is the main purpose of media. So, sabi natin, the media is there to tell us something, tell us about current events, inform us about current events. The story, of course, can be said na could be entertaining, informative, ano pa ba, yung mga purpose of media. So, but storytelling is the main purpose of media. And in discussing traditional and new digital media, it is good to go back to history on how people tell stories. So, paano nga ba nagkwento noong unang panahon at ngayon yung mga tao, no? So, and also we will tackle about how people convey information and education and entertain people. So, here's a good read entitled Introduction to Traditional Media. So, from the neosac.in. So, this is called this a content from that website. So, Introduction to Traditional Media. Sabi dyan, it is important to understand that communication is not only confined to print, television, radio, photography, internet, etc. That there are other ways of communication which exist in different forms in and around you. Can you recall having seen a dance performance, a magic show, or a festival mela? So, do you realize that all these forms communicate some messages of entertainment? So, these forms communicate messages of entertainment. Some are educational, and most of them are informative. So, have you ever thought of how people used to share or exchange their joy, sorrow, or information with each other before the existence of electronic media? What were the mediums that helped them to communicate with each other? In this lesson, you will learn about some of these mediums of communication. So even today, you will find villages where there is no proper electricity. So, mga area na walang electricity. And people in such places may not be able to view television or access the internet. Similarly, illiterate people who will not be able to read newspapers or magazines. However, this does not mean that they do not communicate. They have also developed different ways of communication depending upon the local language and culture. So, again, it is highly important to understand that communication still exists even without the technology. And that is through the local language and culture. Okay, so you may have heard many stories from your parents or grandparents about the Ramayana, Mahabharata, about kings and queens who ruled the country several years ago. Similarly, there are stories about festivals and rituals and how to become good human beings. Information in this way has been handed over from one generation to another and constitute different forms of traditional media. So let us now define traditional media. The non-electronic mediums which work as the part of our culture and as vehicles of transmitting tradition from one generation to another generation is called the traditional media. So this is non-electric medium. Ibig sabihin, ito yung mga word of mouth that are part of the culture, no? The languages, mga kwentong bayan, usap-usapan, na nagpasalin-salin from one generation to another. We call that traditional media. Although, sabi natin, nagbago na rin yung definition yan because we have the tri-media or the traditional media as yung tatlo, no? Yung tri-media natin, the television, radio, and newspaper. No, pero when we talk about traditional media, it is really about the non-electronic mediums o yung word of mouth. No? So traditional tools of communication are developed from beliefs. Yan, ano yung laman ng mga traditional media? Laman yan are beliefs, customs, and rituals practiced by the people. These are old and deep-rooted, malalim na umuugat, no, sa tradisyon ng mga tao. So traditional media thus represents a form of communication employing vocal, verbal, musical, and visual folk arts forms transmitted to a society or group of societies from one generation to another. They are indigenous modes and have served the society as tools, medium of communication for ages. Okay, so different forms of traditional media. A traditional media form can be anything which does the purpose of communication in your family, friends, and as a whole, in society. So, we talk about forms, no? Ano yung mga forma, no? Ano yung mga klase ng traditional media that exists, no? It is anything. It can be anything na ang purpose niya is to communicate people to one another. So you have already seen that these forms are different in different regions and communities, but for our understanding, this can be divided into the following. So these are the sample of forms of traditional media. The traditional dance, so pag napansin mo, bawat bayan sa Pilipinas have traditional dance, no? Pagka napunta ka ng parang sa Cebu, may sinulog, no? Sa may ubando, yung sayaw ng ubando, Dakarinyosa, di ba? Datinikling. Yan. And I think there are some elementary schools also, no, na merong parang field day na tinatawag, and people, or students, are practicing or performing traditional dances na nag-exist dun sa area. So, including also with the traditional media forms are the drama. Yung drama naman, yung mga parang sinakulo, including yan, yung mga theatrical drama, and even the telenovela dramas na nag-exist ngayon. We can call it part of the traditional media. Pero since we talk about non-electronic, sabi natin yung performing arts, no, yung sinakulo, yung mga zarzuela, yan. Yan yung mga klase ng drama. Of course, the painting, sculpture, yung songs, mga traditional songs, mga awiting bayan, are examples of that. And the music, yung mga music naman, syempre bukod sa awitin, yung song, no? Yung musika naman, yung mga tugtugin, parang pagka halimbawa medyo brass or sabihin natin na parang copper-ish yung music, no? Parang ang naalala natin dyan, mga nasa Mindanao area, 'di ba? Meron silang mga yung kanilang musical instrument na ginagamit, mga tugtugin. And then, meron din tayong bamboo music, yung parang tunog ng bamboo. Yan. And then, of course, the motifs and symbols, yung motifs o mga simbolo, including the artifacts ng mga tao, no? Halimbawa, ikaw ay taga Bisaya, no? Sabihin na lang natin muna yung yung ikaw ay taga Zambales, Zamboanga rather. Meron kang vinta, 'di ba, yung colorful na flags ng paano ba 'yon? Yung bahagi ng bangka nila, yung vinta, is part of the motif and symbols of the Sambongueño na familiar sa kanila. So that's part of the traditional media. That's how they can establish and easily portrays, taga doon ako, no? And we have to understand that this traditional media, no, na meron talaga silang motif and symbols because sometimes in storytelling, in producing contents na nasa Pilipinas, sometimes sila yung yung madaling kailangan mong i-establish para sa location. So halimbawa, alam mo yun, meron tayong specific images per location. Halimbawa, Manila. Ano ba yung pinaka-image natin sa Manila? It's like parang yung sa may Manila Bay na area, ganun yung concept natin ng Manila eh. O kaya, I think the flowers of Dangwa area, 'di ba, yung mga tindahan ng bulaklak doon sa Dangwa. That's how we see Manila. And then other part like Cebu, so how can you establish an area? How can you establish na yung area ay Cebu? So, 'di ba, I think the sinulog, no, they are the symbols and motifs na pagka binigay mo agad yon in storytelling, in making and producing contents, may establish agad, maunawaan agad ng audience natin, okay, So this is somewhere in Cebu, and the location is Cebu. Okay? And then, let's go to the next part. So storytelling is another interesting format of traditional media, which existed at a time when advanced forms of communication, such as the written word, did not exist. So, for example, historical stories of various local heroes who fought battles and participated in the freedom struggle were performed through song and drama. These were not written or documented. Instead, they were orally communicated from one house to another or one village to another. So, yung storytelling, yung kwento, no? Kwentong bayan is also part of traditional media. So, the difference between traditional media and television. So, the traditional media, we call them as a non-technological in nature, flexible, but culturally rigid, less expensive medium. Messages are presented before a live audience and reach is limit. Ibig sabihin, kung hanggang saan lang yung naririnig na boses nung ano ba yun, yung doon sa area na yun lang yung abot nung traditional media. But electronic media, on the other hand, is different. No, it is technological in nature. It needs technology, flexible but enjoys cultural freedom. Expensive medium which needs high monetary investment. Of course, you have to buy the infrastructure needed for these electronic media, no, bago mo siya ma-broadcast. And messages are transmitted or broadcast, reaching out to a large number of people. So that's how different electronic media to traditional media. In traditional media forms like storytelling, theater, dance, singing, etc., your body is your media. You can create messages and communicate without using any form of mass media. You can create your own media. No? In traditional media, ikaw yung may kayang gumawa ng sarili mong media without the need of technology. Yun, magsalita ka lang, okay na eh. So, for example, in street theater, social or political messages are presented before the public with a performance by a group of performers. Even solo, yung mga monologue, public speaking, ayan, we can consider them as a traditional media. You do not need any special piece of equipment unlike television or radio. Likewise, ballad singing is popular form where a single person sings on issue related to the public. It will be very simple to understand, but at the same time, it contains several critical comments about society. Here also, there is no need for instruments, chorus, or a stage. A singer with a creative thought and awareness of issue and loud vocal strength can turn himself into powerful people's medium or traditional medium. On the other hand, for the electronic media, you need a certain style, dress code, diction, literacy, etc. And in order to do that, no, parang pag hindi ka literate about technology, hindi mo siya magagamit, hindi mo ma-maximize. Yun yung sinasabi dyan. So, the diction, alam mo yun, it should be acceptable doon sa mga audience, yung diction. Diba? Kasi, yung, kahit nag-i-English ka na, pag mali yung diction mo, hindi ka rin maintindihan ng, ano mo eh, diba? Ng audience mo. Ganun yung concept niyan eh. Alright. So, on the other hand, they generally do not involve active audience participation, but traditional media is inclusive in nature. They are highly intimate and local specific and deeply connected to one's own lives. So, digital, new, interactive, and emerging media. So, with the existence of old forms of media mentioned before, here comes television, radio, newspaper, films, and other mediums of communication before the emergence of the internet. They are also called traditional media. Others call it electronic media. To simplify and avoid confusing terminology, overwhelming information, let us include them in the old media category. So here are some screenshots of the simple explanation of Benjamin Hanson and Sky Samson taken from slideshare.com. So the old media and the new media. So what are the old media? The term old media has become synonymous with the 7 traditional forms of mass communication, including books, newspapers, magazine, films, sound recording, radio, and television. Old media paradigm shift is the paradigm shift happened in 1962 as extreme changes of creating, delivering, and consuming content, moments such as digital revolution and the birth of the World Wide Web changed the face of how we communicate. All media is the product of large organizations such as the Walt Disney Company, Time Warner, Viacom, CBS, and many more. Each of these companies employed many highly skilled professionals which lead the vision of operating at great expenses. The new media paradigm shift. So consumer as producers 1980s. So nangyari dito, the consumer, because of the World Wide Web, yung mga audience na mismo yung naging producer. Nagkaroon ng redistribution of power. No? Redistribution kasi dati, yung mga telecommunication lang talaga, taga-TV, taga-radio, taga-newspaper, sila yung gumagawa ng content. Pero this time, in the 1980s, anyone can produce, deliver content to a public audience because of the World Wide Web. So, they can post a video through YouTube, ayan, Twitter, and of course, they can share weather reports from CNN iReport. So, user-generated content, or the UGC, or consumer-generated media, or CGM, are what we call doon sa contents na ginawa ng mga consumer. No, yung mga, kung ikaw ay nagawa ng video, you post a picture, you post a status, yung tawag doon sa ginawa mo is UGC or CGM or the consumer-generated media. Okay? So, most online media is supported through advertising costs, which means consumer pay nothing or partial subsidized costs. Ang nagbabayad ng ginagawa mo is hindi ikaw, kundi yung mga advertisers. No? Sila yung nakikisakay doon sa mga ginawa mong content. Kaya libre yon kasi maaring may nagbabasa noon. At nag-advertise naman papunta sa kanila. So many newspaper corporations are simply adapting to the new ways but keeping the old available as well. Okay? So now, ganun nag-develop yung new media, no? From traditional media na TV, ng radio, and the newspaper, now nagkaroon ng digital format. And then these digital formats are what can you say? Paano ba to sabihin? I think nagbago ng form, no? Nagbago ng platform rather. Yung mga content ng television is not just available in television but also available in the websites, even in streaming sa applications, no, katulad ng Netflix, naging available na yung mga telenovela na dating sinusubaybay natin sa television. So nagkaroon ng kalayaan doon sa nagkaroon ng kalayaan yung tao kung ano yung gusto nilang basahin. Kasi nga, they don't need to buy the newspaper kasi nasa internet na lahat ng copy ng newspaper o kaya meron silang access doon, no? Hindi nila kailangan bilhin yung physical newspaper. They can do it online. So, nagbago, sa madaling salita, nagbago yung media natin, nagbago yung platform or lumawak pa yung platform natin, nag-coexist and co-evolve. New media is the umbrella term for all channels of communication and content sharing using computer technology. It is called digital media because it is dependent on the internet. New media is online, immediate, interactive, emerging, and continuously developing. No, kaya siya new media kasi continuously developing. Parang tawag nito, when edad ko siguro nasa 13 years old ako. Ang social media namin during that time is the MySpace at yung Friendsters. Now we have Facebook and I think medyo nag-improve na yung power ng Facebook compared sa Friendsters dati. Mas dumami yung audience, mas dumami yung mas dumami yung connected, mas maraming content. Ayan. So, it continues to evolve. Hindi siya natapos. So, the new media and communication as we learned in chapter 15, yan, Huwag natin basahin yan. Media and communication work together in powerful ways. New technologies develop and diffuse into regular usage by large numbers of people, which in turn shapes how we communicate and how we view our society and ourselves. The transition over the past 20 or so years from old media to new media marks a significant change in how we use technology to communicate. As device and the messages carried on them move from mass to micro, and our relationship with new media becomes much more personal and social than it was with old media. So sabi natin, balikan natin yun, no? The transition over the past 20 or so years from old to new media marks a message carried on them from mass to micro, and the relationship with new media become much more personal and social than it was with old media. Ano yung pinapoint niya, no? Yung old media natin, the television, the radio, and the newspaper, the content creators, the owners of these media believes of or set the audience as passive, na kahit anong ibato mo lang sa kanila, no, okay lang. Ganon. It was significant change kasi nga malawakan yung pagtingin doon sa audience mo. Pero ngayon, naging micro na, no? Micro or social, personal and social yung atake ng ginagawa ngayon. So, paano po sabing personal o social? Parang, ang tawag dito, because of the social media, mas kilala na ngayon, mas nata-target na ngayon ng advertisers yung kanilang target audience. Mas kilala na nila ngayon. Dati kasi age bracket lang age bracket. Alam mo yun, when you want to advertise children, advertisement about children, ang gagawin mo lang, mag-advertisement ka sa oras ng umaga. Kung kailan sila sabing nanonood daw o sa mga time slot lang ng mga pangbata na palabas. Ganun lang. Without assurance kung talaga bang bata yung nanonood sa akin, may bata ba talaga nanonood sa akin, 'di ba? So more of time lang yung concept nila. Wala rin silang pakialam sa location, no? Saan ba nakatira to? Basta may TV yan, okay lang. Pero ngayon, because of the social media, nade-determine na kung ano yung location ng audience, taga saan siya, ilang taon siya, specifically ilang taon siya, ano yung mga interest niya. Yan, yung data gathering na nagawa ng social media is really helpful for advertisers na natatarget na talaga nila kung sino yung gusto nilang matarget. Yan. So, given that this area of content so what makes new media? When we consider old media, which consists of mainly print, radio, and television or movies, we see that their presence in our lives and our societies was limited to a few places. For example, television and radio have long been key technology features in the home. Movies were primarily enjoyed in theaters until VCRs and DVD players brought them into our homes. The closest thing to a portable mass media was reading a book or paper or the commute to and from work. New media, however, are more personal and more social than old media, which creates a paradox we will explore later in this chapter as we discuss how new media simultaneously separate and connect us. So it separates us and somewhat it connects us. So in this section, we will trace the evolution of new media and discussion how personal media and social media fit under the umbrella of new media. The evolution of new media. Okay, para ma-define natin, no? O paano nga ba naging different, at naging new media ito, no? As we're discussing them here, couldn't exist without the move from analog to digital technology. So the types of new media we will discuss are digitally based. So digital media are composed of and or designed to read numerical codes, hence the root word digit. The most common used system of numbers is binary code, which converts information into series of zeros and ones. This shared code system means that any machine that can decode binary code can make sense of, store, and replay the information. On the other hand, analog media are created by encoding information onto a physical object that must then be paired with another device capable of reading the specific code. So what most distinguish analog media from digital media are their physicality and their need to be matched with a specific decoding device. So kung halimbawa, ang gamit mo ay tape, yung cassette tape, kailangan meron kang cassette player. O kaya kung DVD, dapat may DVD player ka. Kung meron kang CD, dapat CD player. So, yun yung kaibahan ng analog. Kailangan yung analog, may specific device ka, dapat meron ka ring specific device for storage. Kailangan meron ka ring specific device for decoding. Or else, hindi yun mangyayari. Hindi mo naman pwedeng isa lang yung DVD doon sa cassette tape kasi di kasya yun. Ganon din yung tape, isa lang mo sa DVD, CD, hindi rin gagana yun. No? So to understand the second distinction between the analog and digital media, we can look at digital music and how various types of analog music had to be paired with specific decoding device. To make recordings using old media technology, groove were carved into vinyl. To make records or changes were made in the electromagnetic signature of ribbon or tape to make cassette tapes. So each of these physical objects must be paired with a specific device such as record player or a cassette deck to be able to decode and listen to the music. New media changed how we collect and listen to music. Many people who came of age in digital revolution are now so used to having digital music that the notion of a physical music collection is completely foreign to them. Now, music files are stored electronically and can be played on many different platforms, including iPods, computers, and smartphones. So, yung pinagkaibahan lang is the device. Dati, pag vinyl lang. Kapag cassette lang. But now, as the technology develops, kahit anong gamitin mo, you have an iPods, you have computer, you have smartphones, lahat ng yan can play your music. Ayun. So, mahaba na yan. So, personal media, we talk about the personal media. Personal media is so named because users are more free to choose the media content to which they want to be exposed, to generate their own content. Yan, parang streaming, parang Netflix. Yung Netflix, walang programming si Netflix, basta lahat yun iyahain lang niya. Then, click mo lang kung anong gusto mong panoorin. You create your own content, lineup of content. And of course, ganoon din sa Spotify, di ba? Yung premium ng YouTube. Yung Amazon Prime para sa Netflix, di ba? Parang sa Netflix. And then, meron din tayong Apple Music for parang Spotify. So, in terms of device, the label personal media entered regular usage in the late 1970s when the personal computer was first being produced and plans wherein the work to create even more personal and portable computing devices. So, kaya nagkaroon ng parang personal media, parang personal computer, no? Dala mo lagi yun, the mobile device, yung mobile phone mo, dala mo lagi yan, and you do everything on your own. Hindi siya katulad ng radio na, yung radio ang maglalatag ng music, yung DJ. Yung sa TV naman, siyempre yung programming pa rin ang maglilista o mag-aayos ng kung ano yung sunod-sunod ng programming. So, ganun yung nangyari dyan. Pero ngayon, because of the advent of technology, naging personal media siya kasi ikaw yung bahala. Meron kang device pero can do many things. So, naging bahala ka na doon kung ano yung gusto mong panoorin, pakinggan, ayan. And even you can also create your own content. So, personal media across the line to new and social media with the growing accessibility of the internet and digital media. As media products like videos, music, and picture turn digital, the analog personal media devices that people once carried around were no longer necessary. Betamax mo, VHS mo, cassette player mo, yan. Hindi na yan lagi kailangan dalhin. Ikaw nang bahala dyan kasi may mobile phone naman na can do the job. Okay? So ano naman yung social media? Media and mass media have long been discussed as a unifying force. The shared experience of national mourning after President Kennedy was assassinated and after the terrorist attack of September 11, 2001 was facilitated through media. Online media in particular is characterized by its connectivity. This type of connectivity is different from that of the mass media we discussed. Whereas a large audience was connected to the same radio or television broadcast, newspaper story, book, or movie via, in a one-way communication channel sent from one place to many. Online media connects mass media outlets to people and allows people to connect back to them. So, parang nagkaroon na from personal media, one personal media to another, ang tawag natin dun is social media. Parang lahat kayo merong access and many users are connected from each other can communicate with each other. Ganun yung tinatawag nating social media. Okay? And then, so let's just understand the key takeaways here. So the new media have had a democratizing effect on society. Democratizing because dati, you can create your own content. You cannot create your own content, but now, you can create your own content. You have the power. Now, the new media give powers to the audience or consumers to create their own media and then share their own thoughts to the society. No? As they help distribute power to people through their social and personal characteristics, instead of media outlets having sole control over what is communicated to audience, media-audience interactions are now more like a dialogue. Mabilis, no? Like a dialogue, mabilis na nakakapag-usap, and then, madali na nakakapag-usap. Kaya siya dialogue na lang, parang dialogue. Mag-chat ka, mag-comment ka, mag-share ka, and later on may magko-comment yan. Mabilis yung proseso, no? Na it become like a dialogue, para kayo nag-uusap lang talaga ng harapan. So the personal access to media and growing control over media discourses by users allow people to more freely express opinions, offer criticisms, and question others. Communicative acts that are all important for functioning democracy. So mas malaya tayo ngayon. So the digitalization of media products allows them to be more easily reproduced and disseminated. Okay, digitalization of media products, no? Yung picture mo, yung video mo na ginawa o kaya kinunan is easily reproduced and disseminate. I-post mo lang yan, maraming makakita dyan. Mas madaling i-share, madaling komentan. Due to increasing rates of piracy, media outlets have started a more aggressive campaign to reduce copyright infringement through threats of prosecution, collaboration with media providers to identify offending users and digital rights management. And last two, the democratizing nature of new media hasn't been welcomed by all, as governments, institutions, and individuals engage in various types of content filtering. Mahalaga yung content filtering. Bakit? Because there are some of people na hindi kayang ma-handle yung power ng social media, ng personal media, na they just create yung nonsense contents. O kaya, they've been patronizing, sabihin natin, not so positive, no, not so good content creators. That's why, madali silang madaya. So the content filtering is governments, institutions, and individuals' way to help other users, no, yung mga not so knowledgeable, na unawain yung mga, to filter yung mga sa tingin nila hindi worthy na na mga contents, yung parang mapanira, alam niyo yun, the more, yun kasi yung nawala sa democratizing nature ng new media. Lahat may laya. So ngayon, kailangan magkaroon ng content filtering para ma-ensure na lahat ng existing o umiikot doon sa social media o sa internet na mga content are reliable, true, no? Totoo. Yan, at hindi paninira. So, content filtering are very important. The connectivity afforded by social and personal media also create more possibilities for surveillance in terms of electronic wiretaps by law enforcement and collection of web browsing, consumption, and online communication data by corporations and organizations. Ito, maganda yung content na ito, ano, yung distinguishing between kinds of new media. Alright, so again, distinguishing between kinds of new media, the reason for the adoption of the abstraction new media such as we have briefly discussed above are important. We will have cause to revisit them in other sections in this part of the book. As we think further about the historical and ideological dimension of newness and media, it is very important to move beyond the abstraction and generality of the term. There is a need to regain and use the term in its plural sense. We need to ask what the new media are in their variety and plurality. As we do this, we can see that beneath the general sense of change, we need to talk about the range of different kind of change. We also need to see that changes in question are ones in which the ratios between the old and the new vary. So below, as an initial step in getting clearer about this, we provide a schema that breaks down the global term new media into some more manageable constituent parts, bearing in mind the question mark that we have already placed over the new. We take new media to refer the following. So in the new media, we have the new textual experience, the new kinds of genre and textual forms, entertainment, pleasure, and patterns of media consumption, such as computer games, simulation, and special effects, cinema. So, new genre of textual forms. No? Yung text dati sa atin is the written and printed. Now, we have the computer games, simulation, special effects, and cinema. Ayan, nagbago na yung textual form kasi nga meron na siyang intro, alam mo, meron na siyang effects like the intro, the transition, no? Kaya nagkaroon ng new textual experience. It affects yung pagbasa natin. And if you think, nagbago rin talaga yung textual experience kasi nga because of the time na nasa cinema, no? Pag nagbasa ka ng text na nasa video o nasa film o nasa video, para merong time constraints, diba? Constraints na kailangan mabasa ko to agad para maintindihan ko, parang gano'n. Unlike ng newspaper, ng printed na malaya ka kung gaano katagal mo basahin, pag-isipan yung text, no, yung nakasulat. But in the new kind of genre, in this new kind of new media, nagkaroon ng oras na naghihinder sa iyo o somewhat pumipigil sa iyo o kaya ay nanggugulo sa iyo sa pagkonsumo ng media. So the new ways of representing the world. We have the new ways of representing the world. The media, which in ways that are not always clearly defined, offer new representational possibilities and experiences, immersive virtual environment, screen-based interactive multimedia. We also have yung augmented reality, yung Pokemon Go, di ba? That is a new ways of representing the world. Parang, paglalakbay sa panibagong itsura ng mundo. Augmented reality. Actually, even in the planning, yung augmented reality are very effective, no? Yung mga building na ginagawa, they create there, you scan the QR code and then mag-open yung camera mo. So it will lead you to a website and then there's an augmented reality. Using that, you can preview kung ano yung maging itsura ng area, no, ng building na ginagawa. So this is a new way of representing the world. Mga emerging technologies yan. So new relationship between subject, users, and consumer in media technologies. New relationship, bakit? Because it changes in the use of perception of image and communication media in everyday life and in the meaning that are invested in media technology. So what is the new about interactivity, 12 new media and new technologies? So bakit sinasabi natin new relationship between subject, users, and consumers in media technologies? Yung dati, TV, no? Let's go with the television, radio, and newspaper na as devices. Nagbago na siya in a way na naging mas portable na. Kasi portable na yung media natin ngayon. Yeah. Dala natin siya kahit saan. So yun yung sasabi ng relationship between the subject, yung user at consumer. The user or the creator of media should always think na itong audience ko are moving or constantly moving. Wala na sila sa bahay lang. Hindi na sila nasa harap ng TV lang. Alam mo yun? So, ganun yung nasa mindset ng creators of the media na ganun yung consumer. Active na yung consumer. It go to different places. Yan. Lagi nasa isip nila yon. So, the content should be somewhat appealing, effective, at the right time, at the right person. Ganun na yung nangyari. And the media technology, of course, lumiit ng lumiit yung devices. Somewhat naging portable na yung concept. So, new experiences of the relationship between embodiment, identity, and community. Shifts in the personal and social experience of time, space, and place on both local and global scales, which have implications for the ways in which we experience ourselves in our place in the world. So, sabi dito, pinag-usapan dito, new experience of the relationship between embodiment, identity, and community. Okay? Dati, masyadong wide o broad yung concept na nasa isip ng creators, ng media creators. Now, mas personal, no? Mas, alam mo yun, mas targeted doon sa specific audience. Yung experience dapat. Ayan. And yung time, space, and place, ayan. Para na siyang parang kahit anywhere you go in the world, as long na nagsasalita ka ng English, yung content na English, maiintindihan mo. Ganun yung parang concept niya dyan. Ayan. So, o hindi na barrier, no? Parang kasi when we go back to try media, the television, the radio, and the newspaper, locative yan masyadong kung saan lang yung location, yun lang yun. I mean, kung nasa Pilipinas ka, pag may dala kang TV, yung palabas lang sa Pilipinas yung mapapanood mo. When you go to the America, to the other countries, iba ng programming yung mapapanood mo, no? Pero now, it's different di ba? Kahit anywhere you go, basta nakamap sa sa cellphone mo ay Pilipinas, the language is English, alam mo yun, yung content hindi na siya ganong nag-iiba kasi yun na yun nakadepende sa tao na, hindi na sa location yung content, nandun na sa personal or social experience. New conception of the biological body's relationship to technological media, challenges to receive distinctions between the human and the artificial, nature and technology, body and media as technological prosthesis, the real and the virtual. Sabi natin, the new conceptions of biological body's relationship to technological media. We have the emerging media na yung wearables na tinatawag. These are the technologies that we wear. And somewhat, these technologies are important kasi nga, alam mo yan, sabi nga, technology makes life easier. Diba? Meron tayong mga technology, the beep card, and they are wearable. Paano wearable? Nasusuot mo siya. And somewhat is biological body's relationship and technological media. Ang gusto natin, mas maliit yung device, mas magaan. Ganun imagine mo na lang kung yung TV suot mo, di ba? So, parang problem yun sa'yo. So, as much as possible, your biological body's relationship to the technological media, you want your technological media is small, portable, magaan, parang hindi mo siya dala. Kaya nga yung mga tao are moving to yung microchip, di ba? Yung microchip, parang beep card nila, microchip na yun. Okay, nalagay niya sa wearables. Ayan. And then, we also have yung mga wearables na yung mga smartwatches, di ba? So, yung relo natin, may mga smartwatches na it monitors the body 'di ba, yung number of steps, yung heartbeat, yan, I don't know, yung iba pa, marami, mga blood pressures, yan, may mga ganong technology that monitors those. So somewhat, it has biological body relationship, no, dun sa technological media. And new patterns of organization and production. So, new patterns. So, according to here, wider realignments and integration in media culture, industry, economy, access, ownership, control, and regulations. If we were to set out to investigate any one of the above, we would quickly find ourselves encountering a whole array of rapidly developing fields of technological mediated production, and even a history of such as the site of our research. So, new patterns of organization and production. Saan yan? Dati, with the Trimedia, alam mo yun, meron ka lang producer, meron ka lang cameraman, meron kang editor, ganun yun siya. Pero now, even the Trimedia created a team na assigned para sa new media, no? Parang ganun, focus sila dun sa new media. So it is a new pattern of organization. Meron silang binago sa organization, dinagdag sa organization na focus doon sa needs ng new media. Ayan. So, yung tawag natin yan, realignment. Ginagalaw natin yung organization, dinadagdagan natin yung reorganization. We hire more professional na mas alam yung new media. Ayan. So, there are people that we use to realign the organization. Yung for example, GMA, they have people working on the website, digital news writer, yan. So, yan. And then the production also drastically shift na you don't just produce on television, you don't just produce on radio, you don't just produce for online. Ang ginagawa mo, lahat yan, isang content, pero you create or produce materials, rather, you produce materials for Trimedia, for new media. So, dati, wala tayong pakialam sa new media kasi mabagal yung internet eh. Pero nung bumili sa internet, nakita natin na malaking bagay pala yung new media, yung internet. So, therefore, we produce also, we maximize the opportunities given by the new media. Of course, we have here yung sinasabi natin under the umbrella of new patterns of organization, we have people who are working with computer-mediated communications. Sila yung gumagawa ng email, chat rooms, avatar-based communication forums, voice-image transmissions, and the World Wide Web, blogs, social networking sites, and mobile telephony. There are also people, ito nga yung sinasabi natin, sila yung mga tao na hinire ng organizations na ito yung trabaho nila. No, dati wala tayong pakialam dyan, pero because of the advent of technology, development of the technology, hinire na natin sila. Okay? So, new ways of distributing and consuming the media text characterized by interactivity and hypertextual formats, the World Wide Web, CD, DVD, podcast, and various platforms for computer games. Yan. Nagbago yung way natin ng distribution and consumption. Dati kasi, Trimedia lang talaga tayo, but now meron tayong mobile games. Meron na rin tayong computer games. Meron na tayong games, no? Iba pang platform na, alam mo yun, doon na natin siya kinukonsume yung media. Marami na sa atin naglalaro, nagla-live. Dati wala yan. Pero ngayon, even the live selling, dati wala naman live selling. Diba? Pero ngayon, nagkaroon ng live selling. Merong live selling, yan yung mga nagtitinda ng kutsilyo doon sa mall na telling us, bilhin mo to, matalim tong kutsilyo na to, o kaya yung produkto na to, yung makina na to. They are the live sellers. Nandun sila sa area talaga. Pero now, alam mo yun, lahat nung kayang may kapal ng mukha para iharap yung kanilang sarili sa camera, we can consider them as a live sellers, and then pinapanood sila, may nanonood doon, may bumibili doon, no? So yung distribution ng media nagbago na, not just in the Trimedia, kundi ngayon through mobile devices, we are being distributed with the media that somewhat we consume, no? inukonsumo natin yung mga yan. Virtual realities, the simulated environments and immersive representational spaces like augmented reality. And a whole range of transformation and dislocation of established media. A whole range of transformations. We have the photography, animation. Photography mo, kaya sinabi ito yung whole range of transformation and dislocations of established media. Yung photography is established media. Pero we edit now the photography. Dati, alam mo yun, yung gamit natin, lumang camera, pagka take mo ng picture dyan, ipapa-develop mo na lang, yun na yun. Wala nang editing dun. Kung ano yung nakita mo, yun na yun. No, yung linaw na lang talaga ng development nung negatives. Pero ngayon, hindi. Nai-edit natin yung kulay, nababago natin yung itsura, di ba? Nakokorek natin, napapapayat natin, napapataba natin. Ayan. Of course, the animation, which is dati, the animation is more on the drawing. Pero ngayon, hindi. Digital na yung animation eh. Mas gumanda, mas realistic, ano ba? Mas maggumanda yung effects. And of course, the television, journalism, film, and cinema. Lahat yan, na-edit na natin. So, it's a transformation. Dati, kung ano yung nakikita mo, pinuputol-putol lang yun, kinakat-to-cut lang yun. Pero now, the television, journalism, film, and cinema, lahat yan na kukorek na natin o kaya na-manipulate na natin. Ayan yung changes niya. No? The characteristics of new media, some defining concepts, and na-discuss na natin yan, yung digital, analog, yan. So, now, iskipan na natin yan. Basahin nyo na lang yung mga concept na yan. The interactivity, interactive communications, and so on. Okay. So, ito, no? Linawin lang natin. What is the interactive text? So, establish ways of thinking about how meaning is produced between readers and text assume a stability of the text but a fluidity of interpretation. So, under conditions of interactivity, this traditional stability of the text has also become fluid. Hence, as critics, we find ourselves having to reconceptualize the status of our own interpretations of the interactive text. Some, at the theoretical point of view, the traditional semiotic tools used for analysis of text become inadequate. Orsett observed in his seminal study of the problem in cybertext consists of interactive dynamic elements, a fact that renders traditional semiotic models and terminology which were developed for objects that are mostly static, useless in their present unmodified form. Instead of the traditional text-user relations, the many kinds of interactivity now available have suggested the need to think of the user as component of cybernetic circuit of machine, text, and body. Cybertext is the wide range or perspective of possible textualities seen as typology of machines, as various kinds of literary communication systems where the functional differences among the mechanical parts play a defining role in determining the aesthetic process. Cybertext shifts the focus from traditional system of author, sender, text message, and reader-receiver to cybernetic intercourse between the various parts or participants in textual machine. Understanding the role of body of this circuit have become increasingly frequent following Marie-Laure Ryan's work calling for phenomenology that analyzes the sense of presence through which the user feels corporeally connected to the virtual world. These approaches are particularly appropriate where the interactive pleasures on offer are primarily kinesthetics rather than cognitive, as in the case of immersive interaction offered by computer games, for example. The idea of disembodied spectator, viewer, reader is fictional subject created by particular ways of conceptualizing the relationship between text and readers. This fiction is founded on the Cartesian model of perception whereby consciousness is seen as separate to and distinct from embodiment. Okay. The cybernetic quality of interaction supported by digital textualities has led some commentators to adopt the use of term configuration in preferences and preference to interaction. Configuration in term, no? To preferences to interaction. This term carries the double force of its derivation from actor network theory inflected to the study of technological design and its more colloquial meaning of the ways in which we're all called upon to individually configure or simply set up our own technological environments. In his study of usability trials, Woolgar defines configuration as designers' attempts to define, enable, and constrains the user through the design of an object which will define and delimit the user's possible behaviors. In this sense, technologies configure as affording particular kinds of behavioral patterns. So whereas the term interaction implies a two-way communication, configuration suggests a two-way, mutually constitutive process through which both user and software are dynamically engaged in refashioning one another in a feedback loop. Moulthrop argues that understanding computer gameplay helps to explain how we are all increasingly called upon to have configuratively relationship with media environments. Okay. All right. So, what is interactive text? No? So, the interactive text is very, paano ba? Para bang medyo, baka malito kayo, no? But that when we talk about text here, text is the media, no? Yung media text, media content, no? The message doon sa media, we call that text. And somewhat this message, this information, these pieces of information is what the readers are understanding whenever we consume media, no? And sabi natin, established ways of thinking about how meaning is produced between readers and text. Paano naman kapag ka-interactive text? Ano yung interactive text? So, the interactive text is that messages or informations na na-encounter natin during the use of new media. Okay. Ang pinagkaiba lang niya is that in tri-media, the text or the messages, the information are possibly passive, no? Passive way coming to the audience, to the readers. But in the new media, yung reader, the consumer, for example, he created a post, may comment. That comment has meaning, has information. And mabilis yun na bumabalik. That is interactive text. That is a form of interactive text. And we have to understand that in order to reply again, to continue the flow of the communication. For example, kaya pinag-uusapan dito is the games. Yan, yung games, computer games in particular, appeal because they are configurative. Yan, configurative, offering the chance to manipulate complex systems within continuous loops of intervention. Yung point dito, halimbawa, naglalaro ka ng game. Imagine, naglalaro ka ng Mobile Legends. Diba? Naglalaro ka ng ML. Ngayon, paano mo nasabing patay na yung kalaban mo when you do an action? Diba merong effect, may effects na lumalabas na somewhat telling you that you killed your opponent. Ganun. Kaya, pa ikaw naman yung namatay, meron ding yung configured, no, na effects, text, videos, animations, sound effects maybe, to tell you yung idea. So that is interactive text. Kasi that text, no, yung sound effects, yung video, yung animation na namatay na is based on your actions. Based on your actions in manipulating the platform. No? Naglalaro ka ng Valorant, for example, may hawak kang baril, binabaril mo, yung pag-click mo ng mouse, hindi ka naman talaga bumabaril eh. You're just clicking the mouse, you're controlling your character, you're controlling the gun. Ngayon, kapag tumama yon, it will, an animation will appear, or kaya effects will appear. That effects is what we call text. At yun yung inuunawa mo. Sabi dito sa unahan, no? Under condition of interactivity, this traditional stability of text has also become fluid. Hindi mo siya kailangang sobrang i-analyze, di ba? Yung SFX na yun, kasi alam mo na yun, naging fluid na sa'yo, natandaan mo na, familiar na sa'yo yung text na yun. Na kapag lumabas yung character yung text o yung animation na ganito, ito yung ibig sabihin niya. Halimbawa, napatay mo, no? Ano ba yun? First kill, like that, yung mga terms na yun, first kill, o kaya yung mga animations na lumalabas, hindi mo na siya masyadong iniisip ano ba meaning nito. No time for that. Naging fluid na yon. Okay, napatay ko na, I go next. Alam mo yon, mabilis mo nang ginagawa yon. That is interactive text. The interactive texts are texts that are configured, no? Computer configured na when you do an action, it will tell you a reply, a feedback. Katulad ng sa post sa Facebook, no? When you click a button like or heart, di ba, kaya like na lang yung like kasi yung button is like sa Facebook. Pag click mo yung like, it will become blue, no? May animation na lalabas ng thumbs up. So that animation of thumbs up is what we call interactive text, telling you na you like it. Parang ganon. Pagka hinold mo naman yung like, lalabas yung ibang options, yung ibang reactions, di ba? And then you choose. Yon. And then, kung ano yung pinili mo, yun ang maiiwan, and ma-realize mo, okay, so I hearted it. Ganun yung interactive text. And that is very, sabihin natin na, yan yung different ng new media sa Trimedia. Kasi sa Trimedia, wala, remote lang ang meron ka eh. Hindi ka lang pwede makapag-like doon, hindi ka lang pwede makapag-heart doon, di ba? And walang interactive text sa Trimedia. Sa social media o sa new media lang meron. Okay? So the problems of producers, so if new media products pose new question about textuality, they also demand different relationships between producers and users. How do you design an interface that offers navigational choice but at the same time delivers a coherent experience? Kaya nga tayo merong UI, UX designer, no? Yung user experience at user interface. No? Because that is where you design an interface. Navigational choices, madaling mag-navigate from one page to another, and at the same time, delivers coherent experience or nauunawa ang experience. These problems will, of course, vary from one text to another. For instance, a website with many embedded links to other sites will offer users many opportunities to take different pathways. Halimbawa, pag marami kang button, mas maraming pathways, mas marami kang pwedeng magawa. Ganun yung idea kasi. Parang pag maraming button yung isang website, i-click mo ito, pupunta sa page na to, pag click mo ito, ibang page naman. Alam mo yun? Sinanay tayo dun sa PowerPoint na yung PowerPoint, when you click it, the hyperlink, di ba? Lilipat ng page na different dun sa iba. So, ayan, they take you to different pathways. The reader's users is quite likely to click onto another site whilst only halfway through your own. On the other hand, within a downloaded interactive learning package or one that runs off a discrete memory drive where there is finite database, the user can be far more easily guided in their navigation to pathways that the producers are able to pre-structure. Yan. So, yung may mga new media naman na, sige, they have the freedom to take different pathways, pero pagka CD, DVD-ROM yung gamit mo o kaya yung discrete memory drive, parang ano yan kumbaga it will still sa dulo, sa finals kayo pa rin magkikita, kumbaga ganun. Meron siyang choices, pero still ikaw pa rin yung may control. You can configure it, no? The digital media text is an environment supporting a range of user activities that emerge within the parameters of the software. Producers therefore need a Wohlgeber's term to configure the user to have some idea of the kinds of behaviors that they want their environment to afford, whilst simultaneously understanding that they can neither fully predict nor control what users will do within it. These rich platforms of interaction therefore have a number of consequences for producers, including they create the possibility for traditional media producers to collaborate with audience by finding ways to incorporate user-generated content in their corporate projects. Yan. Like newspaper crowdsourcing stories. So yung mga newspaper, parang yung create the possibility for traditional media producers to collaborate with audiences. Diba sabi sa YouTube video, please comment down below if you think about what you think about my video, may ganon. So that is an offering of collaboration to the audience para alam mo kung ano yung gusto mangyari ng audience, and then you create then the content that they wanted. Parang ganon, based dun sa comments nila. So they also redefine the producer not as author but as experienced designer. No, as when because of the new media, the author is not just an author but rather an experienced designer. Iniisip mo saan ko gusto, no, na ano yung gusto kong pindutin ng aking audience, una, sunod hanggang sa matapos. Paano ko, parang when we talk about the experienced designer kasi, alam mo, even the painter, no, yung mga traditional media painter, sa mga paintings, no, meron naman talagang experience design sa mga painting. Ibig sabihin, saan mo unang gustong tingnan? Ano yung unang mong gustong tingnan? Tapos ano yung kasunod? Ano yung kasunod hanggang sa makita mo na ng kabuuan yung buong painting. Ganun din yung new media. Meron kang gustong unang puntahan, di ba? Kaya may landing page, homepage yun, tapos may mga secondary pages, ayan. So, yun kasi yung gusto mong experience na gawin ng audience mo. And that is very, common sa new media. Kasi ikaw na, maraming pindot maraming pathways, pero doon, sa pathways na yon, you can control or manipulate your audience, saan sila pipindot from first, second, and then third, and so on. So authors produce text that readers interpreted. Interactive media designers are increasingly experienced designers, creating open media spaces within which users find their own pathways. Okay, audiences' expectations of an interactive experience with a mediated world create the conditions for transmedia production in which, for instance, a TV program can be repurposed across a range of platforms, a website with chat forum capability, a box set DVD with additional material, a computer game, etc. And then, this is the hypertext one. So, you can just read it. Now, there are clear link between the navigational. So, yung hypertextual is that yung hypertextuality has ideologically overtones and is another key term that has been used to mark off the novelty of new media. So, hypertext and hypertextuality remain an important part of history of computing, particularly in the way they address ideas about the relationship of computer operation system, software, and database to the operations of the human mind, cognitive processing, and learning. And yung hypertextuality, hypertextual, we say that the new media is hypertextual. Sabi natin, more of, different path, pero we can predict yung navigation yung paano nila-navigate. Pinag-iisipan natin. Ayan, new media is hypertextual, but we can navigate or we can manipulate the audience on how they navigate or explore yung new media text, yung new media content. Okay? Yung website mo, ayan. Instead, it's about more of designing. So, hypertextual is common. O sabi natin, ito yung isa sa mga katangian ng new media na the links between the navigational, explorative, and configurative aspects of interactivity and hypertextuality. Okay? So, sinasabi natin na hypertextual, paiba-iba ng pages, explorative, maraming pages, yan. But still, we can manipulate, we can predict kung ano yung movement ng ating audience. Okay? So, thank you so much for listening. That will be the lesson for this week. Thank you so much.